Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule.
Microplastics have been found in items consumed by us daily, such as sugar and salt. It's becoming clearer with each passing day that microplastics pose health risks to humans. Continue watching to find out more.
Ahoy means hello in Slovak, the official language of Slovakia. This is how the affable people of Slovakia would greet you if you ever visited their land. Splendid viewers, my name is Edita. The people of charming Slovakia wish that your days are filled with God's love. Welcome to our show, The Dangers of Microplastics to Health, Part 1 of 2. We are surrounded by plastic. It's used for food packaging, shopping bags, computer parts, cosmetics, clothing, home appliances, and so on. Plastics are made from a wide range of synthetic, semi-synthetic, and naturally occurring compounds. Scientifically speaking, these compounds are composed of repeating monomers, which are based on the bonding of carbon and other elements such as hydrogen, oxygen, sulfur, etc. It is these repeating monomers that make plastics strong, lightweight, and flexible. Because of these properties, plastics are very useful and an essential part of our daily lives. Since the mid-20th century, our tremendous reliance on plastics has fundamentally changed the way we live. Only recently has there been an increasing awareness of health consequences to humans from plastics. Additives such as bisphenol A linked to affecting thyroid function and phthalates, a possible cause of breast cancer and obesity, are incorporated into plastic during the manufacturing process to make it more durable. These are just some of the chemicals in plastics that have sparked scientists' concern. Plastics are currently produced at a rate of approximately 320 million tons per year, and an astonishing 40% of this amount can be classified as single-use, leading to unending piles of plastic waste. It is estimated that by 2025, plastic waste in the marine environment could reach 250 million tons if active measures are not taken. Potential health threats posed by plastics include scientific evidence that chemicals can leach out and enter our food, ultimately accumulating in our bodies. When the concentration of these chemicals reach a certain threshold level, it can affect vital body processes, such as those carried out by the endocrine system. Many parents are worried about bioaccumulation in children and how this will affect future generations. What are microplastics? Plastic litter is classified into two major categories, macroplastics and microplastics. Macroplastics are well known for negatively affecting living species, including destroying marine habitats. In the beginning, the detrimental impacts of microplastics did not seem to draw as much public attention as those caused by macroplastics. However, over the years, emerging evidence of their dangers has alarmed many and prompted further investigation and action by scientific and medical communities. Microplastics are less than 5 mm in diameter. Some microplastics originally were macroplastics, but they disintegrated into smaller fragments by mechanical abrasion and ultraviolet or UV exposure. Other sources of microplastics include microfibers released when washing synthetic clothing, and microplastic beads in cosmetic products such as facial cleansers. Due to their light weight, microplastics can easily recirculate between seawater and beach sediments via winds and currents. In the ocean, marine organisms such as fish, seabirds, and sea turtles can mistake microplastics as their food and ingest them. The consequences of ingestion can lead to oxidative stress and disruption of nutrient intake. Not only are marine animals endangered by the presence of microplastics in seawater, but algae are also victims of the toxicity leached from them. Microplastics have significant negative impacts on tissue, cellular and biochemical functions of organisms. The resulting deaths from microplastics exposure imperil biodiversity and ecosystems. A study of a Scottish wastewater treatment plant found that even though it reduced the microplastic concentration of effluent by more than 98%, it was still releasing 65 million microplastics into the environment each day. In the United States alone, an estimated 8 trillion microbeads, typically microplastics put in personal care products, end up in aquatic habitats daily after water is processed by wastewater treatment plants nationwide. Furthermore, the sludge generated from sewage treatment that is utilized for agricultural purposes has also been discovered to contain synthetic clothing fibers. Microplastics can be picked up by the wind from sludge-based fertilizer, clothes drying outdoors, and degraded agricultural polyethylene sheets and spread widely. In addition, microplastics have been found in items consumed by us daily, such as sugar and salt. It's becoming clearer with each passing day that microplastics pose health risks to humans. Microplastics can potentially contain endogenous chemical additives which are incorporated into plastic products during production. Consequently, these additives can leach into the external environment due to a lack of chemical bonding to the plastic polymer matrix. In addition, other chemicals inside plastic products can migrate to the surface along a concentration gradient, which is a chemical phenomenon of substances moving from a higher concentration to a lower concentration. These migrating chemicals will be released as they degrade and, if ingested, may be distributed to different parts of the body. They can cause health issues if they accumulate within the body to a certain degree and have the capacity to leach. In a 2015 study, scientists found microplastics in 15 brands of table salt available in the consumer market in China. The product sourced the salt from oceans, lakes, or rocks. A grain of salt is small, but is still visibly distinguishable. So how small were those plastic particles that remained after the production filtering process? The scientists found nearly 700 microplastic pieces in size down to 45 micrometers in 1 kilogram of sea salt. Among them, the predominant plastic detected was polyethylene terephthalate, or PET, which is commonly used to make single-use bottles for water and other packaged drinks. The authors concluded the abundance of microplastics in sea salts was significantly higher than that in lake salts and rock well salts. This result indicates that sea products such as sea salts are contaminated by microplastics. It's been barely over a century since the invention of plastic in 1907, and there are now plastics in our salt. In addition to the dietary exposure pathway, evidence for atmospheric fallout containing microplastics has been found. A study was carried out in a densely populated urban area and a less populated suburb in Paris, France. Samples of particles collected were mostly fibers, and around 30% were plastic. The data revealed that the concentration of plastics was higher in urban areas with more heavy rainfall. In addition to hanging synthetic clothes outside, synthetic rubber tires also have been recognized as a source of microplastics. From samples of particulate matter, or PM, collected in Japan, researchers found 0.16 micrograms per cubic meter of tire wear in the PM10 fraction, meaning that tiny particles of plastics with a diameter of 10 micrometers or smaller were drifting in the air. These scientific findings not only show that the microplastic wastes in our water can come from airborne microplastics, but also point out the possibility of humans inhaling the material. The size of microplastics and the concentration in the air directly affects our health due to the respiratory function and structure of the airway in the human body. Once microplastics enter the respiratory tract, they may be trapped by the lung lining fluid, which is a barrier to substances or pathogens from outside. However, some are more stubborn and elude the clearance mechanism of the respiratory tract. Individuals with impaired clearance mechanisms are especially susceptible to the intrusion of external stimuli like fine dust or microplastics. In occupational health literature, it has been found that the health of synthetic textile industry workers can be damaged by exposure to microfibers. In a study published in the American Journal of Respiratory and Critical Care Medicine examining nylon flock-associated interstitial lung disease in the US and Canada, pathologists found lymphocytic bronchiolitis in the lung specimens from 15 factory workers, suggesting an inflammation in the small airways. When 6 of the employees were removed from the workplace, their clinical symptoms such as coughing, breathlessness, and reduced lung capacity were resolved without medical treatment. Another 6 workers also recovered after removal from the factory. However, their return to work led to relapses of symptoms. In the first episode, we have talked about the source and composition of microplastics and how they enter the environment as well as potentially harm humans. Today, we learn about the detrimental effects of microplastics in detail. Nowadays, the majority of clothing contains synthetic fabrics such as nylon or polyester. Clothes like t-shirts, dresses, and jeans may use cotton that is blended with synthetic materials. These man-made fabrics are comprised of plastic fibers. Workers in the fabric manufacturing plant may inhale them. The dimensions of microfibers are an important factor for their toxicity. Finer fibers are easier to eliminate from the airway, while longer fibers are more difficult to expel from the body and may destroy pulmonary cells. The biopersistent ones are more likely to cause acute or chronic lung inflammation. The microplastics do not stay in the factory. Every time synthetic garments are put in the washing machine, a single load could generate up to 700,000 microfibers that eventually end up in the sewage system. In addition to the inhalation pathway, microplastics can also enter the body through ingestion. Peyer's patches are groups of lymphoid follicles where macrophages, dendritic cells, B lymphocytes, and T lymphocytes are found. Peyer's patches line the small intestine and play an important role in immune function. It is responsible for the surveillance of pathogenic microorganisms and activation of the immune response. When foreign particles, such as microplastics, enter the small intestine, they will be engulfed by immune cells. However, if there is a significant number of microplastics ingested and enter the Peyer's patches, they could accumulate in this region. This would disrupt the normal function of particle transportation and surveillance of foreign particles. Eventually, a person's immunity could be compromised, thus making one more susceptible to intrusion of pathogens or toxic particles. In one study, 20% of human immune cells in a petri dish free of microplastics died within a 24-hour period, but when another group of such cells was exposed to microplastics under the same conditions, 60% died. Besides influences on respiratory and gastrointestinal systems, microplastics can also act as carriers of endocrine disruptors. Before we jump into the topic of the endocrine system, let's have a quick overview of it. It is a communicating system that detects the hormone concentration in the bloodstream and delivers this information back to the organ producing the respective hormone. For example, thyroid glands are responsible for making thyroid hormones that control the body's metabolic rates as well as cardiovascular and developmental functions. The endocrine system acts as a throttle or brake to regulate the amount of thyroid hormones created. If one's heartbeat rate is too fast, the negative feedback loop of the endocrine system will send signals back to the thyroid gland to reduce the amount of thyroid hormones being secreted into the bloodstream. Endocrine disruptors, which include phthalates and bisphenol A or BPA, are chemical compounds that act like endogenous hormones or hormones made within our bodies due to similar molecular structures. Both substances are routinely used in plastics production. Serious health issues can arise if chemical compounds mimic endogenous hormones because they can confuse the body. For example, according to a medical literature review published in 2015 in the journal Medicine, bisphenol A can imitate the hormone estrogen and bind to the estrogen receptors to trigger changes in cell proliferation, apoptosis, or programmed cell death or migration. This means that bisphenol A in the body can potentially lead to cancer, where the cells divide uncontrollably, create tumors, and spread in the surrounding tissues. The cancer can also migrate to other parts of the body, known as metastasis. Researchers at Arizona State University, USA, took 47 liver and fat samples from donors and used mass spectrometry to see if there was any evidence of microplastic accumulation. 100% of the samples tested positive for microplastics, and bisphenol A was detected in some of the tissues. It is time for us to rethink plastics and make immediate changes in our habits. Here are some tips to minimize the risks of microplastic waste being introduced to the environment or being in our immediate surroundings. 1. Avoid single-use plastic bags. According to statistics, about 1 trillion single-use bags are used worldwide annually. That equals to nearly 2 million bags utilized every minute. So when you go shopping, make sure to bring your own bags. Always keep one handy when you go out. This is a very important first step to curtail the use of single-use plastics. 2. Buy food in bulk and products with less or no plastic packaging. In 2015 alone, more than half of the discarded plastics in the world came from plastic packaging, over 141 million metric tons. The equator could be circled 10 times by the amount of plastic bubble wrap manufactured each year. 3. Use glass containers instead of plastic ones. Now we know that plastic can potentially carry toxic chemicals that can disrupt the body's endocrine system. We can choose glass. 4. Recycle. When tossing plastic trash, pay attention to ensure it is placed in the correct recycling container. That way we can maximize the amount of plastics being recycled. 5. Avoid cosmetic products that contain microbeads. A single tube of facial scrub can contain up to 330,000 microbeads, which are microplastics that are less than 1 mm in size. Approximately 100,000 plastic particles can go down the drain during a single shower when a shower gel with microbeads is used. According to a report from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or OECD, many countries such as Australia, Canada, Italy, Korea, New Zealand, Sweden, the UK, and the US have followed the Netherlands' decision to ban microbeads in cosmetic products in 2014. Your choice as a consumer can make a difference to your health and the environment. 6. Quit smoking. An estimated 4.5 trillion cigarette butts are tossed into the environment each year worldwide. Not everything in a cigarette gets burned when it is smoked. The cigarette filter, also known as the cigarette butt, is made of a type of plastic called cellulose acetate. When it enters the environment, not only does it add to the existing microplastic waste as it breaks down over the years, but it also introduces toxic chemicals and nicotine to the surroundings. Therefore, quitting smoking is a wonderful way to improve health and the environment. 7. Minimize household dust. A study estimated that people in the United States take in 74,000 microplastic pieces annually by eating, drinking, and breathing. Airborne particles might contain microplastics. An investigation of household dust gathered by using a vacuum cleaner found 190 to 670 microfibers per milligram of dust. By doing more vacuuming and cleaning, you may be able to reduce exposure to microplastics and harmful chemicals like phthalates that adhere to dust particles. We hope today's program has changed the way you look at plastics and has provided you with insights on how we can lessen the negative effects of microplastics on our world. Brilliant viewers, thank you for your company on today's program. Up next is Reclaim Your Power of Love and Compassion, Part 4 of 8, on Between Master and Disciples, right after noteworthy news. May your life always be filled with God's love.
Our programs offer many languages. Please visit suprememastertv.com/schedule and suprememastertv.com/HL.